Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast, because tonight we're traveling back in time to walk the cobbled streets of the Eternal City, accompanied not by emperors or soldiers, but by the quiet companionship of the four-legged friends that filled the ancient world with life. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. The history of Rome is often told through the voices of senators, the clash of legions, and the roar of the Colosseum crowds. But there is another history, a softer history, spoken in low growls, gentle purrs, and the rhythmic clatter of hooves on basalt stones. It is the history of the animals that lived alongside the Romans, sharing their homes, their streets, their beds, and their food. Tonight, we turn our attention away from the grand monuments of marble and look instead at the warm, breathing presence of the creatures that made the ancient world feel like home. We will explore the bond between human and animal, a bond that stretches back thousands of years, unchanged by the rise and fall of empires. To understand the daily life of animals in Rome, one must first understand the sensory landscape of the city itself. Rome was never truly silent, even in the deepest hours of the night, when the heavy carts were permitted to enter the city gates to deliver their goods. There was the presence of animals. Before the sun even crested over the Esquiline Hill, the city began to stir with the sounds of its non-human inhabitants. It was a world deeply interconnected with nature, even within the dense urban sprawl. The concept of a sterile, animal-free home was alien to the Roman mind. Life was biological. It was messy, warm, and constantly moving. Imagine, if you will, the early morning light filtering through the atrium of a modest Roman house. The air is cool, perhaps carrying the scent of burning wood from the Hippocaust, or the smell of baking bread from a nearby oven. The first sound to break the stillness is not a mechanical alarm, but the organic, timeless call of a rooster. Poultry was kept not just on farms, but often in the back gardens of city dwellings, a source of eggs and a natural timekeeper for the household. But as you shift in your bed, pulling the wool blanket tighter around your shoulders, you might feel a weight at the foot of the bed, a heavy, comforting warmth. This is the family dog, or Canis, the most ubiquitous and beloved of all Roman companions. The relationship between the Roman citizen and the dog was profound. It was a relationship built on mutual utility and genuine affection. In the Roman worldview, the dog was a gift from the gods, specifically associated with protection and loyalty. They were the guardians of the threshold, the watchers in the night, and the playmates of children. As we begin our long examination of animals in Rome, we must start with the dog, for no other animal held quite the same status in the domestic sphere. There were many types of dogs in Rome, though they were not classified into the strict pedigree breeds we know today. Instead, they were categorized by their function. Let us visualize the most famous of these functional types, the Canis molossus, or the Molossian hound. Imagine a dog of immense stature, heavy-boned and broad-chested. Its fur is short and dense, often dark in color, perhaps a brindle or a deep black that blends into the shadows of the portico. This was the quintessential guard dog. When you walk past the entrance of a wealthy Roman home, you might see a mosaic on the floor. It is a warning, but also a statement of fact. The tiles are black and white, meticulously arranged to form the image of a large, chained dog, teeth bared, ears perked. Beneath it, the inscription reads, Cave Canem, beware of the dog. This was not merely a threat to thieves, it was an acknowledgement of the dog's role as the first line of defense. The Molossian was not a pet to be trifled with by strangers. It was a serious animal for a serious world. However, let us look past the bared teeth of the mosaic. Let us imagine the Molossian not as a statue, but as a living, breathing creature at rest. It is midday. The sun is high and hot, baking the stones of the peristyle garden. The guard dog, off duty for the moment, lies in the shade of a cypress tree. Its breathing is slow and rhythmic, a heavy heave of the ribcage. Flies buzz lazily in the heat, and occasionally the dog's ear twitches to flick them away. This is the boring reality of the guard dog's life. Hours of patient waiting, hours of sleeping, conserving energy for the moment it might be needed. The texture of the Molossian's coat is coarse to the touch, meant to withstand the elements. Romans valued these dogs for their durability. They were not pampered in the modern sense, but they were deeply cared for. A good guard dog was an investment. Writers of the time, like Columella, advised on their care with great specificity. He suggested that guard dogs should be black, so they could terrify thieves by day and remain invisible by night. He wrote about their diet, recommending barley flour mixed with whey or bread soaked in the water from boiled beans. It was a hearty, simple diet for a working animal, but there is a softness here too. Even the fiercest Molossian was, at its heart, a pack animal. When the master of the house returns, the formidable guardian transforms. We can imagine the heavy thump of a tail against the floorboards. We can see the massive head resting on a knee. The Romans were not immune to this affection. We have found tombstones, carved with great care and expense, dedicated to these dogs. Epitaphs that read, "To a good dog," or "Here lies a faithful friend who never barked without reason." These stones tell us that even the working dogs, the heavy, imposing Molossians, were named, loved, and mourned. Let us drift away from the heavy guard dogs for a moment and consider the smaller companions. Not every dog in Rome was a giant bred for war or protection. There was the Melliton, the Maltese, a small, white, fluffy creature that existed solely for comfort. These were the lap dogs of the Roman matrons. Picture a small, warm bundle of white fur curled up in the folds of a stola. These dogs were symbols of status, yes, but they were also sources of warmth in the drafty Roman winters. The Melliton was a creature of the indoors. Its paws rarely touched the mud of the streets. It lived a life of cushions and hand-fed scraps from the table. While the Molossian chewed on bones in the courtyard, the Melliton slept in the crook of an arm. The Romans understood that animals could serve a purpose simply by being pleasant to touch and hold. The act of stroking a dog's fur, a repetitive, calming motion, was as soothing to a Roman senator as it is to us today. It is a tactile bridge across time, the simple, rhythmic petting of a sleeping animal. As we visualize these dogs, we must also visualize the environment they inhabited. The Roman house was an open structure. The atrium had an opening in the roof, the compluvium, which let in rain and sunlight. This meant that the boundary between inside and outside was fluid. Birds would fly across the open space. Insects would buzz near the impluvium pool, and the dogs would wander freely between the sun-drenched stones of the garden and the cool, shadowed tiles of the interior rooms. The sound of a dog's nails clicking on the mosaic floor is a constant background noise in our mental reconstruction of a Roman home. Click, click, click. A pause, a heavy sigh as the animal collapses onto its side to sleep. The sound of a tongue lapping water from a clay bowl. These are the small, insignificant sounds that make up the texture of daily life. They are the sounds of safety. If the dog is sleeping peacefully, then the house is safe. If the dog is calm, the master can sleep. In the countryside, the role of the dog expanded even further. Here, the Canis pastoralis, the shepherd dog, reigned supreme. Unlike the black guard dog of the house, the shepherd dog was often white. This was a practical choice, so the shepherd could distinguish his dog from the wolves in the twilight or the chaos of an attack. These dogs were shaggy, resilient, and incredibly tough. They lived their entire lives under the open sky, sleeping with the sheep, their fur matted with burrs and dust. Imagine a hillside in the Italian countryside, perhaps in the region of Samnium. The grass is dry and golden. The air smells of wild thyme and pine resin. A flock of sheep grazes slowly, moving like a single cloud across the landscape. Watching them, motionless on a rock, is the white shepherd dog. It is not asleep, but it is in a state of deep, meditative rest. Its eyes are half closed against the glare of the sun. It is a creature of immense patience. It does not run unnecessarily. It does not bark without cause. It simply exists, a silent sentinel in the vastness of nature. The bond between the shepherd and his dog was perhaps the closest of all. They shared the same food, the same solitude, and the same dangers. They slept huddled together for warmth on cold nights. The dog was not just a tool. It was the shepherd's only companion in a world that was often lonely and quiet. As we continue to explore this world, we will move from the dogs to the other creatures that populated the Roman imagination and reality. We will look at the enigmatic cats, which were far less common than dogs, but held a specific, revered place. We will look at the birds, the horses, and the strange exotic animals that sometimes found their way into private homes. But for now, let us linger a little longer with the image of the dog. Visualize the Roman streets at dusk. The shops are closing. The wooden shutters are being pulled tight. The noise of the day is fading into the murmurs of the evening. And everywhere, on every corner, in every doorway, a dog settles down to rest. Some are well-fed guardians of rich estates. Others are scruffy street dogs, looking for a warm spot near a baker's oven. They curl their tails around their noses. They close their eyes. They drift into sleep, just as we are doing. They are the silent heartbeat of the city, the loyal friends of a civilization that has long since turned to dust, yet whose love for these animals remains immortal. The silent watchers and the grain guardians. As the echo of the dog's bark fades into the distance of our imagined city, a different kind of presence begins to manifest. It is a presence defined not by sound, but by the absence of it. We leave the heavy, grounded energy of the Molossian hound and turn our gaze toward a creature of liquid movement and stillness, the cat. In the early days of the Roman Republic, the cat was a rare sight. Unlike the dog, which had been a companion to the Italic peoples since time immemorial, the domestic cat was a traveler, an immigrant from the golden sands of Egypt. To the early Romans, the cat was an exotic curiosity, a creature that walked with the dignity of a pharaoh and possessed a gaze that seemed to see into the spirit world. But as the empire expanded, so too did the population of these silent watchers. They arrived on grain ships, slipping down the gangplanks in the port of Ostia, their paws touching Italian soil for the first time. They came not as conquerors, but as necessary allies in the eternal war against rodents. Visualize a Roman grain storehouse, a horium. It is a vast, cavernous brick building near the Tiber River. The air inside is thick with the dust of wheat and barley. It smells dry and earthy, a smell of harvest and abundance. The sacks of grain are piled high, reaching toward the shadowed ceiling. This is the lifeblood of Rome, the food that feeds the million souls of the city. And where there is grain, there are mice. But in the shadows of the sacks, something moves. It is a movement so subtle it barely registers. Two amber eyes blink in the darkness. A small, lithe body striped in shades of gray and black. A tabby pattern that blends perfectly with the shadows creeps along a wooden beam. This is the working cat of Rome. It is not named Fluffy or Mittens. It is simply Felis. It is a focused, efficient hunter. Watch the cat as it pauses. One paw is raised, suspended in the air. Its ears swivel, independent of one another, listening to the tiny scratching sounds of a mouse deep within the grain pile. The patience of the cat is infinite. It can hold this pose for minutes, a living statue in the dust-moted air. This stillness is hypnotic. If you were to watch it, your own breathing would slow down to match the creature's intense concentration. Then, a blur of motion, a silence broken only by a soft thud, and the job is done. The grain is safe. The city eats another day. While the dogs guarded the doors, the cats guarded the sustenance. It was a quieter duty, performed in the dark corners and the rafters, unseen and often unthanked. Yet, the Romans, with their keen appreciation for utility, came to respect the cat deeply. The writer Pliny the Elder, who observed the natural world with such detail, marveled at the cat. He wrote of their silent approach, their sudden pounce, and the way they buried their waste to keep their surroundings clean. To the orderly Roman mind, this cleanliness was a virtue. The cat was a civilized animal. As time moved on, the cat migrated from the warehouse to the house. It moved from the cold brick of the horium to the warm mosaics of the villa. Here, the cat's role softened. It became a companion, specifically favored by women and scholars who appreciated a quiet presence. Imagine entering the tablinum, the study of a Roman house. Scrolls are spread out on a wooden table. A wax tablet lies ready for writing. The room is quiet, conducive to deep thought. And there, curled up on a cushion near the master's chair, is a cat. It is asleep, curled into a perfect circle, nose tucked under its tail. The rhythmic rise and fall of its flank is the only movement in the room. The texture of a Roman cat was likely similar to the stray cats we see in Rome today, short-haired, sleek, and muscular. They were not the long-haired, bred-for-show animals of modern times. They were practical animals, but their fur was soft. To run a hand down the spine of a sleeping cat, to feel the vibration of a purr, was a luxury. The Romans called this sound a murmur, a low, continuous vibration that resonates through the hand and settles the nerves. In the mosaics of Pompeii and Rome, we see how the Romans viewed these animals. There is a famous mosaic from the House of the Faun in Pompeii. It depicts a cat, wide-eyed and alert, seizing a bird. The artist has captured the tension in the cat's muscles, the arch of the back, the wildness that remains even in the domestic setting. The Romans admired this duality. The cat was domestic, yet it remained wild. It lived in the house, yet it belonged only to itself. Let us imagine a rainy afternoon in Rome. The rain drums rhythmically against the roof tiles, a soothing, repetitive patter. Inside, the braziers are lit to chase away the damp chill. The family is gathered in the central room. The dog is likely under the table, hoping for a dropped piece of cheese. But the cat? The cat has found the warmest spot in the entire house. Perhaps it is perched on top of a chest, high up where the warm air gathers. Or perhaps it has found a spot near the hypocaust vent, where the heat from the underfloor heating rises. The cat stretches. It extends its front legs, spreading its toes wide, exposing the sharp, curved claws, then retracts them. It yawns, revealing a pink tongue and small white teeth. It grooms itself, the rough tongue moving over its paw in a methodical, hypnotic rhythm. Lick, pause, lick, pause. The sound of a cat grooming is one of the quietest, most peaceful sounds in the world. It speaks of safety, of comfort, of a creature that feels completely secure in its environment. Unlike the dog, which needed to be walked, trained, and managed, the cat simply existed alongside the family. It was a low-maintenance guest. It required no leash, no commands. It came and went as it pleased, often disappearing onto the rooftops of the city at night. The rooftops of Rome at night were the domain of the cat. Imagine looking out from a high window over the sprawling city. The moon casts silver light over the sea of terracotta tiles. And there, silhouetted against the moon, a cat walks along the ridge of a roof. It moves with absolute confidence, a tightrope walker high above the sleeping streets. It meets other cats, exchanging silent signals, perhaps a low growl, perhaps a touch of noses. They were the secret owners of the city's upper levels, navigating a geography of tiles and gutters that no human ever saw. But let us return inside, to the warmth. The cat jumps down from the window ledge, landing silently on the floor. It walks over to where you are sitting. It rubs its flank against your leg, a gesture of ownership. "You are mine," it seems to say. Then it jumps onto your lap. It turns around 3 times, kneading the fabric of your tunic with its paws, making a nest. Finally, it settles. The weight is warm and grounding. The purring begins, a soft engine of contentment. This interaction, this simple moment of connection between human and feline, has happened millions of times over thousands of years. A Roman soldier returning from a campaign, a baker resting after a night of work, a child playing with a string. All have felt the same soft fur, heard the same purr. It is a continuity of comfort. We must also consider the other small animals that shared this domestic space. While dogs and cats were the primary 4-legged companions, the Romans had a fascination with nature that extended to other creatures. We see evidence of caged birds, of tamed weasels, and even of snakes kept as household protectors. Before the cat became fully established as the primary mouser, the weasel or ferret was often the animal of choice for pest control. Imagine a small, serpentine creature, quick and incredibly agile, darting under the furniture. The weasel was less affectionate than the cat, more of a pure utility animal. It did not purr on a lap. It did not offer warmth. It was a frantic, high-energy presence. Perhaps that is why, as the centuries turned, the cat slowly replaced it. The Romans, who valued their leisure and their comfort, their otium, preferred the animal that knew how to relax. The cat taught them the art of doing nothing. The weasel was restless. The cat was restful. And in a city as busy, loud, and chaotic as Rome, the ability to rest was a precious commodity. The cat became a symbol of liberty in some contexts because it could not be constrained or ordered about. It lived on its own terms. As the candle burns lower in our imagined room, casting long, dancing shadows on the frescoed walls, the animals of the house settle into the deepest part of the night. The dog twitches in a dream of chasing rabbits. The cat is a motionless ball of fur, lost in a slumber so deep it seems like a hibernation. The house breathes around them. The stone walls hold the heat of the day and release it slowly. The world is safe, guarded by the dog and watched by the cat. But outside the walls of the city, in the countryside villas and the farms, the relationship with animals took on a different scale. There, the animals were not just companions or mousers. They were the engines of agriculture, the symbols of wealth, and the carriers of burdens. In the next part of our journey, we will leave the intimate, enclosed space of the city bedroom and venture out to the stables and the fields. We will meet the horse, the donkey, and the mule, the animals that moved the empire. The rhythm of hooves and the scent of hay. The city of Rome may have slept under the watchful eyes of dogs and cats, but the empire itself moved on the backs of stronger beasts. Let us leave the soft cushions of the tablinum and the warm tiles of the atrium. We step out into the cool, blue light of the pre-dawn. The air is different here, away from the enclosed domestic spaces. It smells of damp earth, crushed grass, and the unmistakable, sweet-sour scent of the stables. We are entering the world of the equus, the horse, and his humbler cousins, the donkey and the mule. While the dog was the guardian and the cat the companion, the horse was the engine of status and speed. But in the quiet hours of the morning, before the races or the journeys began, the horse was simply a living creature needing care. Visualize a Roman stable. It is a structure of wood and stone, lined with stalls. The floor is covered in straw, fresh and golden, rustling softly underfoot. It is quiet here, save for the comforting low sounds of large animals at rest. You hear the deep, resonant exhale of a horse clearing its nostrils, a sound that's both powerful and peaceful. You hear the shifting of weight, the thud of a hoof stamping against the packed dirt to dislodge a fly. Walk down the aisle of the stable. The horses' heads appear over the wooden gates. Their eyes are large, dark, liquid pools reflecting the torchlight. These are not the sleek thoroughbreds of modern racing, though Rome prized speed. These are sturdy animals, with thick, arched necks and strong shoulders. They are built for endurance on the hard Roman roads. The daily routine of the horse was a ritual of tactile care. A groom, or a gasso, enters the stall. He speaks in low, murmuring tones. The language of the stable is universal. It is a language of soothing sounds, of shh and easy now. The bond here is physical. The groom begins the morning ritual of cleaning. In Rome, they did not have the wire brushes we might see today, but they used sponges, cloths, and scrapers. Imagine the sound of a coarse cloth rubbing against the horse's coat. Swish, swish, swish. It is a rhythmic, scrubbing sound. The dust rises in small motes, dancing in the shafts of light breaking through the high windows. The horse leans into the pressure, enjoying the grooming. Its skin twitches slightly. The groom runs his hand down the animal's leg, checking for heat, for swelling. It is a slow, methodical inspection. Every muscle is known. Every tendon is checked. Then comes the feeding. The sound of a horse eating is perhaps one of the most grounding sounds in existence. Grain is poured into a wooden trough. Barley, perhaps, or oats. The horse lowers its heavy head. Then the crunching begins. Crunch, crunch, grind. It is a steady, mechanical rhythm. The jaw moves side to side. There is no urgency. For the next hour, this is the only thing that matters. The smell of the crushed grain mixes with the smell of the hay, creating a warm, earthy aroma that fills the lungs and slows the heart. But not all hoofed creatures in Rome lived such a life of relative luxury. We must look to the humbler stalls, to the animals that truly built the world of antiquity, the donkeys and the mules. The mule, a hybrid of a male donkey and a female horse, was the unsung hero of the Roman road. They were less skittish than horses, stronger than donkeys, and possessed an sure-footedness that was essential on the uneven stones of the Roman highways, the viae. If you were a traveler in Rome, or a merchant moving olive oil from the countryside to the city, you relied on the mule. Picture a line of mules standing patiently in the courtyard. They are being loaded. This is not a quick process. The pack saddles made of wood and leather are heavy. They creak as they are lifted onto the animals' backs. Creak, thud. The mules stand still, their long ears swiveling to catch the sounds of the morning. They are creatures of immense stoicism. They accept the weight. Baskets are strapped to their sides. Clink, tighten, knot. Perhaps they are carrying amphorae filled with wine from the vineyards of Campania. The terracotta jars are heavy, sealed with pine pitch and cork. They are packed in straw to prevent breaking. The mule bears it all. Its eyes are half-lidded, seemingly bored, but it is merely conserving its energy. Now, let us follow this caravan as it moves out onto the Appian Way. The sun is up now. The stones of the road are gray and flat, fitted together with the precision of a jigsaw puzzle. The sound of the caravan is a hypnotic percussion. Clop, 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 clop. The iron shoes of the mules, or sometimes leather boots called hippo sandals, used for traction, protection, strike the basalt. It is a steady, marching beat that echoes off the surrounding cypress trees and tombs that line the road. There is a specific tranquility to travel at the speed of a mule. The world does not blur by as it does in a car. It passes slowly. You have time to see the individual leaves on the olive trees. You have time to watch a hawk circling in the thermal currents above. The rhythm of the animal becomes your rhythm. Your body sways slightly with the gait of the beast. It is a rocking motion, like a cradle, that can easily lull a rider to sleep in the saddle. The Romans had a deep appreciation for this pace. While couriers needed speed, the average Roman was accustomed to the slow, steady progress of animal transport. The mule was the reliable constant. It did not spook at a blowing leaf. It did not refuse to cross a stream. It simply walked, one foot in front of the other, mile after mile. Let us pause by a roadside fountain, a lacus. The water spills from a stone spout, perhaps carved in the shape of a lion's head, into a basin. The caravan stops. The animals smell the water. Their ears perk up. You can hear the sound of them drinking, long, deep draughts. Slurp, pause, swallow. Water drips from their muzzles, creating dark spots on the dusty road. The drivers wipe their brows. leaning against the warm flanks of the animals. There is a shared fatigue and a shared relief. Man and beast, pausing together in the shade of a stone arch. This relationship was not without its tenderness. We know that Romans named their mules and donkeys, just as they named their dogs. We find graffiti on stable walls where workers have scratched the names of their favorite animals, names that imply strength or speed or perhaps a stubborn personality. They were individuals. And let us not forget, the donkey, the asinus, smaller, often gray with a dark cross across the shoulders. The donkey was the worker of the mill. In the bakeries of Rome and Pompeii, large stone mills were used to grind grain into flour. These hourglass-shaped stones were too heavy for men to turn for long. So, the donkey was harnessed to the millstone. It was a monotonous life, walking in circles, hour after hour. Round and round, the heavy stone grinding against the base. Grind, grind. But in this repetition, there was a meditative quality. The donkey would often be blindfolded to keep it from getting dizzy or distracted. It walked in darkness, guided by the voice of the baker and the touch of a hand on its flank. The smell of flour was everywhere, coating the donkey's coat in a fine white powder, making it look like a ghost animal in the dim light of the bakery. Yet, even here, there was care. When the work was done, the harness was removed. The donkey was brushed down, the flour dusted from its ears. It was given fresh hay and water. It rested, and in the quiet of the bakery at night, when the ovens were cooling, the donkey slept standing up, a silent statue of service. The presence of these animals was so integrated into Roman life that the city itself smelled of them. It was not just the smell of stone and cooking, it was the smell of leather tack, of horse sweat, of manure, of straw. It was an organic city. The connection to the land was never fully severed because the animals brought the land into the city. Imagine running your hand over the neck of a horse. The coat is warm, slightly oily to the touch. The mane is coarse, like thick wire. The muscles underneath are hard and distinct. The animal turns its head and nudges you with a velvet soft nose, looking for a treat, a fig perhaps, or a piece of carrot. The breath is warm and moist on your hand. In that moment, the centuries dissolve. The feeling of a horse's nose in your palm is the same today as it was 2,000 years ago. It is a timeless, tactile experience. As the sun begins to set in our journey, the animals are returned to their stalls. The harness is hung on a peg on the wall. The leather is wiped down with oil to keep it supple. The smell of the oil is sharp and clean. The horses and mules settle into their straw. The sounds of chewing return. The stable becomes a place of safety and warmth against the encroaching night. We leave them there, safe in their routines. But the Roman world was not just populated by pets and working animals. There was another category, one that bridges the gap between the wild and the domestic, between the ground and the sky. In the next part of our journey, we will look up. We will explore the world of birds, from the chickens in the backyard to the exotic peacocks in the gardens of the wealthy, and the wild birds that nested in the temples, the aviaries, the altars, and the morning chorus. We leave the heavy, earthy scent of the stables behind us now. The sun has risen fully over the 7 hills of Rome. The morning mist has burned off the Tiber River. As the city wakes, the air is filled not just with the sounds of carts and voices, but with a complex symphony of wings and songs. We are entering the domain of the birds, the aves. For the average Roman, the day began with a bird. Long before the water clocks dripped their measurements or the sundials cast their shadows, the rooster announced the arrival of the light. It was a sound as natural as the wind, a ragged crowing call that echoed from the backyards of the Suburra to the villas on the Palatine. Poultry was everywhere. Rome was not a sterile metropolis. It was a city of small gardens and courtyards, and in almost every one of them there was a coop. Visualize the humble chicken, the gallus. It is perhaps the most overlooked animal in history, yet it was central to Roman life. Watch a hen in a dusty Roman courtyard. She moves with a jerky, rhythmic head bob. Step bob, step bob. She scratches the dry earth with a clawed foot. Scritch, scratch, kicking up a small cloud of dust. She looks down, inspects the ground, and pecks. Tap. It is a cycle of endless searching, a calming, repetitive behavior that defines her existence. There is a specific texture to a chicken's feathers. They are smooth and glossy on the outside, overlapping like the scales of armor. But underneath, near the skin, they are incredibly soft and downy. If you were to pick up a Roman hen, you would feel the intense heat of her body radiating through the feathers. Birds run hot. They are small furnaces of life. You might feel the rapid, fluttering beat of her heart against your palm, a reminder of the fragility of life. And then there are the eggs. Collecting eggs in the morning was a task for the children or the slaves of the household. Imagine reaching into a straw-lined nest box. It is dark inside. Your hand brushes against the dry, prickly straw. And then, your fingers find the smooth, curved surface of an egg. It is still warm from the hen. It feels heavy and solid, yet you know it is delicate. The color is a pale brown or a creamy white, speckled perhaps with small imperfections. It is a perfect object, a simple gift of sustenance found in the straw. But in Rome, chickens were not just for breakfast. They were conduits to the gods. The Romans took their birds seriously. Before a great battle or a major political decision, they consulted the sacred chickens. This was the practice of the Polarius, the keeper of the sacred chickens. Let us imagine this ritual. It is quiet. A small area is roped off. The Polarius opens the cage. He scatters a handful of grain, spelt or pulse, onto the ground. The sound of the grain hitting the earth is like falling rain. Patter, patter. Everyone watches. The generals, the senators, the soldiers, they all hold their breath. They are watching a chicken eat. If the chickens rush out and eat greedily, so greedily that grain falls from their beaks, it is a good omen. The gods favor the enterprise. If they refuse to eat, if they huddle in the back of the cage, it is a disaster. It is a strange and boring way to decide the fate of an empire. Watching poultry peck its seeds in the dirt. But it speaks to the Roman desire to find order in nature, to read the will of the universe in the behavior of the smallest creatures. Leaving the sacred and the humble, we move to the ornamental. For the wealthy Roman, birds were a way to bring beauty and color into the home. The rich built vast aviaries or ornithones in their gardens. These were not small cages, but large enclosed spaces with netting, planted with trees and shrubs, containing fountains and pools. Walk into a Roman garden aviary. The light is dappled, filtering through the leaves of a plane tree. The air is cooler here, and everywhere there is movement. You see the flash of a green wing, the red of a beak. Romans loved exotic birds. They imported parrots from India and Africa. The psittacus, or parrot, was prized for its ability to mimic human speech. Imagine sitting on a stone bench in this garden. A green parrot lands on a branch near you. It tilts its head, its dark eye examining you with an intelligence that feels almost human. It squawks, a harsh, tropical sound that cuts through the polite murmurs of the garden. Maybe it repeats a word it has heard 1,000 times. Av, hail, or shere, hello in Greek. It is a living toy, a brightly colored conversation piece. But the king of the garden was the peacock, the pavo. To the Romans, the peacock was the ultimate symbol of luxury. It was the bird of Juno, the queen of the gods. Watch a peacock walking across a manicured lawn. It moves with a slow, deliberate grace, lifting each foot high before placing it down. Its neck is long and slender, covered in iridescent blue feathers that shimmer in the sunlight, changing color as the bird moves, from sapphire to emerald to deep violet. Then, the display. The peacock stops. It shakes its tail feathers with a dry, rattling sound. Shh. And then, the fan opens. It is a wall of eyes, a mesmerizing pattern of gold, green, and blue. It is almost too much to look at, a sensory overload of pattern and color. The bird turns slowly, ensuring that everyone in the garden sees its perfection. And then, it calls out. The cry of a peacock is not beautiful. It is a haunting, high-pitched scream that sounds like a woman calling for help, or a ghost in the night. It is a strange contrast, the visual beauty and the eerie sound. The Romans also had a fondness for smaller, gentler birds. Doves and pigeons were everywhere. The cooing of a dove is one of the most soothing sounds in the world. It is a low, bubbling sound, a soft coo-roo-coo. In the peristyle gardens, doves would perch on the rim of the fountain, dipping their beaks into the water to drink. They were symbols of Venus, of love and peace. We must also remember the wild birds that made the city their own. The Roman Forum, the heart of the empire, was also a massive nesting ground. Swallows built their mud nests in the eaves of the Temple of Saturn. Sparrows, the passer, flitted between the columns of the Basilica Julia. The sparrow holds a special place in Roman literature. The poet Catullus wrote famous poems about his lover Lesbia and her pet sparrow. He described how the bird would hop around her lap, chirping only for her, and how she would let it peck at her fingertip. It is a tender image. A powerful Roman woman, dressed in fine silk, playing with a tiny brown bird. She offers her finger. The bird nips at it gently. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated playfulness. It reminds us that people in the past were just people. They loved small, cute things, just as we do. As you walk through the city in your mind, look up at the statues of the emperors and the gods. They are majestic, carved from white marble. But look closer. On the shoulder of Jupiter, a pigeon is preening its wing. On the head of Caesar, a seagull has landed to survey the crowd. The birds did not care for Roman hierarchy. They used the monuments of the empire as convenient perches. They brought a layer of messy biological reality to the grandiose architecture. There were also the birds of the night. As the sun sets and the chickens go to roost, the owls, the strix, wake up. The Romans were superstitious about owls. They were often seen as bad omens, harbingers of death. To hear the hoot of an owl on a rooftop was to feel a shiver of fear. But from a distance, the owl is a magnificent creature. Visualize an owl perched on the branch of a cypress tree in a cemetery outside the city walls. It is a silhouette against the moon. Its head rotates silently. Its eyes are enormous, gathering every photon of light. When it takes flight, it makes no sound. The feathers of an owl are specially designed to muffle the sound of air passing over them. It is a ghost of the air. It glides over the tombs, hunting for mice, a silent predator in the dark. From the scratching of the hen in the dust, to the shimmering tail of the peacock, and the silent flight of the owl, birds filled the Roman world with life. They occupied the air, a space that humans could not touch. They were messengers, pets, food, and symbols. They connected the earth to the sky. But there is another element we have not yet explored. We have looked at the land and the air. Now, we must look to the water. The Romans were masters of water engineering, aqueducts, fountains, and baths. But they also brought water into their homes for pleasure and for food. In the next part of our journey, we will lower our gaze to the cool, dark surface of the fish pond. We will watch the slow gliding movements of the fish, the Pisces, and explore the Roman obsession with aquaculture and marine life. The silver gliders and the stone ponds. We have walked the dusty roads with the mules and listened to the morning chorus of the birds. Now let us seek refuge from the midday heat. In the center of the Roman villa, past the atrium and into the colonnaded garden, lies a sanctuary of coolness. Here, the air is moist and heavy. The sound of the city is drowned out by the gentle, continuous music of falling water. We are standing at the edge of the piscina, the fish pond. For the Romans, water was not just a necessity. It was a luxury to be displayed and enjoyed. And the inhabitants of this water, the fish, or Pisces, were creatures of immense fascination. They were the silent pets, the silver gliders that lived in a world of their own, separated from us by a thin, shimmering surface. Visualize the pond. It is rectangular, lined with smooth marble or waterproof concrete, known as opus signinum. The water is deep and green, reflecting the blue sky and the white columns of the peristyle. Shadows of the overhanging laurel trees dance on the surface. If you look closely, past the reflection, you see them, shapes moving in the deep. A school of gray mullet drifts lazily near the bottom. They move as one entity, turning in perfect unison. There is no sound to their movement. It is a friction-free glide. Watching fish is a form of meditation. Your eyes track a single fish as it swims towards the edge. It stops, fins waving gently to hold its position. Its mouth opens and closes in a slow rhythm. Pop, pop. It is testing the water, tasting the currents. The Romans took their fish ponds very seriously. For the wealthy elite, these were not just for food, they were for pleasure. Some senators were mocked by their peers for being more concerned with their mullets than with the state of the republic. They were called piscinari, fish breeders, a term used with a mix of scorn and envy. But standing here, in the tranquility of the garden, one can understand the obsession. In a chaotic world, the fish pond was a controlled universe, peaceful and predictable. Among the most prized inhabitants of these ponds was the muraina, the moray eel. Today, we might think of eels as frightening or ugly, but to the Romans, they were beautiful. They were kept as beloved pets. The orator Crassus, a man of great power and influence, famously kept a pet eel. He adorned it with earrings, tiny jewels attached to its gills or fins, and necklaces. When the eel finally died, Crassus wept for it, mourning it as one would mourn a child. Imagine the scene. A powerful Roman man, wearing a toga, kneeling by the side of a stone pool. He dips his hand into the water. The surface breaks, sending ripples outward. From the shadows of a rock, a long, sinuous shape emerges. The eel. It does not bite. It swims to the hand, wrapping its long body around the wrist in a slippery, cool embrace. It accepts food from the fingers, perhaps a piece of chicken or a small fish. It is a strange, slimy intimacy. The texture of an eel is smooth, devoid of scales, like wet velvet. To touch it is to touch something ancient and primitive. The movement of the eel is hypnotic. It moves like a ribbon caught in a breeze. Shaped curves ripple down its body. It retreats back into its amphora. Often old wine jars were placed at the bottom of ponds for the eels to hide in. It backs in slowly until only its head remains visible, swaying gently, watching the world above the waterline. There were also the practical ponds, the vivarium. These were holding tanks for fresh food. In a world without refrigeration, keeping fish alive was the only way to ensure freshness. Oysters, Ostrea, were cultivated in great numbers. Imagine the oyster beds at Baiae, a resort town on the coast. Rows and rows of ropes suspended in the sea, heavy with the rough, calcified shells of oysters. Oysters are the definition of a boring animal. They do not run. They do not jump. They do not make noise. They simply exist. They filter the water, opening their shells slightly to feed. Open, close. Open, close. It is a life of pure stillness. Yet the Romans loved them. They were the taste of the sea, salty and cold. To eat an oyster was to consume the essence of the ocean itself. Let us return to the garden pond. The fountain in the center is a simple stone structure. Water bubbles up from a spout and cascades down over tiered basins. Trickle, splash, drip. The sound is white noise, a natural lullaby. It masks the harsh noises of the street outside. It creates a bubble of privacy. Sit on the edge of the pond. The stone is cool beneath you. Dip your toes in the water. It is shockingly cold, a sharp contrast to the warm air. The fish dart away at the disturbance, flashes of silver in the gloom, but soon they return, curious. They nibble at the surface tension. The light changes as the afternoon wears on. The sun dips lower, and the water turns from green to gold. The reflections of the columns stretch out, distorted by the gentle waves. This is the hour of odium, of leisure. A Roman might bring a book of poetry here, reading a few lines, then staring into the water for an hour. The mind empties. The worries of politics, of money, of war, dissolve in the ripples. There is a philosophical aspect to this as well. Seneca and other Stoics wrote about the behavior of animals. They observed how fish do not worry about the future. They do not fear death until it is upon them. They live entirely in the present moment. Watching them, the Roman observer is reminded to do the same, to float, to let the current carry them, to be cool and silent. Even the maintenance of the pond was a slow, rhythmic task. A slave would come with a net on a long pole to skim the leaves from the surface. Dip, lift, shake. The wet leaves are deposited in a basket. The water is left pristine again. The sides of the pond might be scrubbed to remove excess algae. It was a constant process of tending, of keeping the water clear so the jewels within could be seen. As night falls, the pond becomes a black mirror. The moon reflects perfectly in the center. The fish are less visible now, just dark shapes moving against the darkness. Occasionally, a fish jumps. Splash. Breaking the silence, a a sudden burst of energy that instantly vanishes. The ripples spread out, wider and wider, until they hit the stone edge and bounce back, interfering with each other in complex geometric patterns. Then, the water becomes glass again. We leave the cool dampness of the fish pond now. We have explored the domestic sphere fully. The dogs at the door, the cats in the study, the horses in the stable, the birds in the aviary, and the fish in the pool. But the Roman relationship with animals extended beyond the home and the garden. It went into the wild forests and the buzzing meadows. In the next part of our journey, we will shrink our perspective down to the microscopic. We will enter the world of the smallest livestock, the bees. We will visit the hives, listen to the hum of the colony, and taste the sweetness of the honey that was so vital to Roman life. We will also venture into the woods to find the wild boars and the deer, the creatures of the hunt, the golden hum and the deep woods. We step away from the edge of the fish pond. The air grows warmer as we move into the orchard, where the sun beats down on the gnarled trunks of olive and apple trees. Here, the silence of the garden is replaced by a sound that is the very definition of a summer afternoon, a low, constant, vibrating hum. It is the sound of the apis, the bee. For the Romans, the bee was not merely an insect. It was a marvel of nature, a model of ideal citizenship. In a world without sugar, honey, mel, was the primary source of sweetness. It was liquid gold. It preserved fruit. It sweetened wine. It healed wounds. Therefore, the creatures that produced it were treated with a reverence that bordered on the sacred. Visualize the Roman apiary, the alvearium. It is located in a sheltered spot, protected from the harsh winds but open to the morning sun. The hives themselves are not the white wooden boxes we see today. They are organic structures. Some are made from the bark of cork trees, insulating the colony against both heat and cold. Others are woven from willow branches, like baskets, plastered with mud to seal the gaps. Some are even carved from hollowed-out logs or made of transparent mica stone for the curious Roman naturalist to observe the work inside. Sit down in the tall grass near the hives. The sound is all-encompassing. Bzzz. It is a white noise, a steady frequency that blocks out thought. Watching the entrance of a hive is like watching a busy city gate. Bees arrive, heavy with pollen, their legs dusted with bright yellow and orange powder. They land clumsily, then crawl inside. Others take flight, launching themselves into the air with a sudden zip of energy. The Roman poet Virgil devoted an entire book of his Georgics to the subject of bees. He described their society with awe, their loyalty to their leader, whom the Romans thought was a king, not a queen, their organized labor, and their cleanliness. He advised beekeepers to plant thyme, savory, and violets near the hives so the bees wouldn't have to travel far. Imagine the scent of this apiary. It is a heady mix of sun-baked herbs, wild thyme, rosemary, and lavender, mingled with the sweet, fermented smell of wax and honey. It is a drowsy scent. The air feels thick with it. Harvesting the honey was a delicate operation, a slow dance between man and insect. The beekeeper would use smoke. Visualize the smoke drifting from a clay pot. It is a gray, curling ribbon that moves lazily through the air. The smell is woodsy and sharp. As the smoke enters the hive, the roar of the bees subsides. They become calm, gorging themselves on honey, their aggression dulled. The keeper moves with slow, fluid motions, no sudden jerks. In the world of the bee, slowness is safety. He cuts a comb of wax. It is heavy, dripping with the viscous amber liquid. The texture of honeycomb is a marvel of engineering, perfect hexagons of wax filled to the brim. When crushed, the honey flows out, slowly, so very slowly. Watching honey drip is a lesson in patience. It folds over itself, forming thick, golden ribbons that pool at the bottom of the jar. It catches the light glowing from within. But the Roman world was not confined to the ordered garden. Beyond the stone walls of the villa, beyond the olive groves and the vineyards, lay the Silva, the forest, the wild. This was the domain of animals that were not pets nor workers, but prizes and mysteries. Let us walk out of the sunlight and under the canopy of the ancient Italian forests. These were dense woods of oak, beech, and chestnut. The light here is dim, filtered through layers of green. The temperature drops. The ground is soft, covered in a thick carpet of fallen leaves and pine needles that muffle your footsteps. Crunch, soft crunch. Here lives the aper, the wild boar. To the Roman hunter, the boar was the ultimate adversary. It was a beast of immense strength and ferocity. But observed from a distance, in its natural habitat, it is a creature of focused foraging. Imagine a clearing in the woods at dusk. The shadows are long. A family of boars emerges. Their coats are coarse, dark bristles that look like wire. They are built like tanks, heavy shoulders tapering to the back. They root around in the soil with their snouts. Snuffle, grunt. They are looking for truffles, roots, and acorns. The sound of their eating is loud in the quiet forest. They are unaware of us. The texture of a boar's tusk is smooth and ivory white, curving dangerously from the jaw. But the animal itself is deeply connected to the earth. It is always smelling, always digging. It turns the soil, part of the cycle of the forest. Deeper still, we might find the cervus, the deer. If the boar is the tank of the forest, the deer is the ghost. It stands absolutely still among the trees, its coat camouflaged against the bark. You might look at a patch of forest for 10 minutes and not see it, until suddenly an ear twitches. The Roman hunt, the venatio, was often a loud affair with dogs and nets. But the solitary observer knew the quiet grace of the stag. Imagine a stag drinking from a woodland stream. The water is clear and cold, flowing over gray stones. Burble, splash. The stag lowers its antlered head. The antlers are covered in velvet, fuzzy and soft, before they harden into bone. The creature is tense, ready to bolt at the snap of a twig. There is a specific stillness in the woods when a predator or a large animal is near. The birds stop singing. The squirrels freeze. It is a heavy silence, a pregnant pause. To sit in this silence, waiting for a glimpse of an animal, is a form of deep rest. You become part of the landscape. You breathe with the trees. The Romans also had a taste for a particular creature of the woods that bridges the gap between wild and domestic, the glis, or the edible dormouse. This small, squirrel-like animal was a delicacy, but before it appeared on a plate, it lived a life of sleepy indulgence. The dormouse is a creature of the night and of the winter. It spends a vast amount of its life asleep, hibernating. The Romans kept them in special terracotta jars called gliraria. These jars had air holes and small shelves on the inside for the mice to run along, and they were kept in the dark. Inside the jar, the dormouse lives a life of permanent twilight. It is fed acorns and chestnuts. It eats, it sleeps, it grows round and fat. It is the ultimate sleepy animal. It has no worries, no predators, just a constant supply of nuts and a cozy curved clay wall to curl up against. To think of a dormouse in its jar is to think of a creature in a state of suspended animation, a furry ball of potential energy that rarely expends it. As we walk back from the forest, the sun has fully set. The transition from the wild woods back to the civilized villa is marked by the change in sounds. The rustling of the leaves fades, replaced by the distant barking of the dogs we met in the first hour. We have seen the animals that guard, the animals that work, the animals that offer beauty, and the animals of the wild. But there is one final category of animals we must address to fully understand the Roman psyche. These are the animals of the arena, the exotic beasts brought from the far edges of the known world to satisfy the Roman curiosity and bloodlust. While the arena was a place of violence, the journey of these animals and their time in the holding pens, the vivaria, is a story of logistics, travel, and the strange meeting of different worlds. We will explore the elephants, the lions, and the bears, not in the moment of combat, but in the long, quiet hours of their captivity and transport. The giants from the south and the long wait. We have explored the intimate corners of the Roman home and the buzzing life of the Italian countryside. But Rome was the center of the world, and to its center flowed not just gold and grain, but the living wonders of distant lands. We now turn our attention to the vivarium, the vast enclosure outside the city walls, and the dark holds of the transport ships. This is the story of the giants, the elephants, the lions, and the bears. Imagine the port of Ostia on a humid afternoon. The harbor is a forest of masts. The air smells of salt, tar, and rotting seaweed. Docked at the quay is a massive freighter, a ship built not for speed, but for capacity. It sits low in the water. From within its belly comes a sound that is alien to the Italian peninsula, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrates through the wooden planks of the deck. Inside the hold, it is dark. The only light comes from the open hatch far above, cutting through the dust motes. Here, in the gloom, stands the Elephantus. To a Roman seeing one for the first time, it must have seemed like a moving mountain, a creature composed of gray rock and wrinkled earth. The elephant stands almost motionless. It is accustomed to the swaying of the ship by now. Its legs are like tree trunks, thick and solid, planted firmly on the straw-covered floor. Its skin is a landscape in itself, a map of deep cracks and crevices, rough like dry bark, yet sensitive to the touch. Watch the trunk. It is the only part of the animal that is constantly active. It moves with a serpentine grace, exploring the straw, searching for a stray piece of fruit or a wisp of hay. Sniff, curl, lift. The movement is silent and fluid. The elephant brings the hay to its mouth. You hear the slow, rhythmic grinding of teeth that are as big as bricks. Grind, grind. It is a slow, methodical chewer. The Roman naturalists, like Pliny, wrote about the elephant with immense respect. They believed the elephant was the closest animal to man in intelligence. They claimed elephants understood the language of their homeland, that they worshipped the sun and the stars, and that they possessed a sense of justice. Looking at the elephant in the shadowy hold of the ship, with its small amber eyes framed by long, stiff lashes, one can believe it. There is a sadness, or perhaps just a deep, ancient patience in that gaze. The journey from North Africa to Rome could take days, days of darkness, of the creaking of timber, of the slapping of waves against the hull. The animals waited. They conserved their energy. They swayed with the roll of the sea. It was a suspended existence, a long pause between the wilderness they knew and the stone city that awaited them. When they finally arrived, they were transported to the vivarium near the Prenestine Gate. This was not a cage in the modern sense, but a large walled park where the animals were kept before their public appearances. Here, the lions, the leones, lived. Visualize a lion in the heat of the Roman midday. A lion is, biologically speaking, a machine built for sleep. In the wild, they sleep up to 20 hours a day. In the captivity of the vivarium, they slept even more. The lion lies on its side in the shade of a high stone wall. Its golden coat blends with the dust of the enclosure. Its belly rises and falls with heavy, hot breaths. Heave, sigh. The air around it seems to shimmer with heat. Occasionally, a paw twitches. The claws, retracted and hidden in the soft fur of the toes, flex involuntarily. A fly lands on its nose. The skin ripples, a quick, shuddering movement, and the fly buzzes away. The lion does not even open its eyes. The sheer physical presence of a sleeping lion is grounding. It is a mass of potential energy at total rest. The mane of the male is thick and coarse, matted with dust. The smell of the animal is heavy, a musk that speaks of raw power, yet in this moment, it is peaceful. The keepers, the bestiari, walk along the walls above, casting shadows over the sleeping beasts. They toss down joints of meat. The lions wake lazily. They eat with the same efficiency as the dogs we met earlier, but with more gravity. In another part of the enclosure, or perhaps in the cool, damp basement of the amphitheater itself, we find the bears, the ursi. These were brought from the dense forests of Germania, or the mountains of Caledonia. The bear is a creature of weight and fur. A bear in captivity often paces. It establishes a rhythm. Step, turn, step, turn. It is a trance-like state, but often they simply sit. Imagine a brown bear sitting on its haunches, its back against the cool travertine wall. Its legs are splayed out. Its head hangs low. It looks like a tired old man in a fur coat. The fur is thick, oily, and coarse. It smells of wet wool and earth. The breathing of a bear is louder than the lion's. It is a wet, snuffly sound. Snort, exhale. Sometimes it lets out a long, low moan, not of pain, but of boredom, a vocalization that echoes off the stone arches. The Romans were fascinated by the bear's ability to stand on two legs, to mimic human posture. But here, in the quiet of the pen, it is just an animal waiting for the season to change. The logistics of feeding these animals were staggering. Carts filled with meat, hay, and fruit arrived daily. The sound of the wheels, the shouting of the drivers, the opening of the heavy iron gates. These were the sounds that marked the passage of time for the captive giants. But let us zoom in on a smaller, more peculiar exotic pet that became a fad among the ultra-wealthy, the monkey or simia. Monkeys were kept in the gardens and the houses, dressed in tiny tunics, treated like small, hairy children. Picture a small macaque sitting on a marble balustrade in a garden. It holds a fig in its small, human-like hand. It peels the fruit with precision, its dark eyes darting around the garden. It takes a bite. It chews quickly. Then it stops. It grooms its tail. The grooming is meticulous. It separates the hairs, looking for dry skin or insects. Pick, smooth, pick, smooth. To a Roman, the monkey was a mirror. It was funny because it was so like us, but also unsettling for the same reason. Yet, in the quiet of a garden afternoon, the monkey is just another heartbeat. It chatters softly to itself, a series of clicks and coos. It curls up on a cushion, wrapping its long tail around its body for warmth. It sleeps with its head tucked into its chest, a small ball of gray fur in the vastness of the Roman estate. There were also the ostriches, the giraffes, which the Romans called cameleopards, a mix of camel and leopard, and the rhinoceros. The rhinoceros was a creature of pure armor. Pliny described it as the elephant's mortal enemy. In the holding pen, the rhino stands like a boulder. Its skin is gray and plated, looking more like stone than flesh. It is nearly motionless, its small ears rotating like radar dishes. It is a prehistoric presence, a living fossil standing on the straw of a Roman pen. These animals were far from home. They were removed from the savannas, the jungles, and the northern woods. But in the strange, suspended time of the voyage and the captivity, they adapted. They established routines. They slept. They ate. They watched the humans watching them. The boring reality of the exotic animal trade was mostly waiting for the wind to change so the ship could sail, waiting for the wagon to be fixed, waiting for the sun to go down. It was a slow, heavy process of moving massive biological mass across the map of the known world. As we stand in the imaginary vivarium, the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The shadows of the lions lengthen until they merge with the darkness of the walls. The elephant shifts its weight from one leg to another, a slow, swaying dance. The bear curls into a ball. The noise of the city outside, the shouting, the carts, the politics, seems very far away. Here, there's only the sound of heavy breathing, the rustle of straw, and the smell of musk. We have now seen the full spectrum of animals in the Roman world, from the bed to the barn, from the sky to the sea, and from the forest to the cage. But there is one final aspect of this relationship we must explore. It is the end of the journey. The Romans did not just live with animals. They mourned them. They buried them. They believed, in their own way, that these creatures had spirits. In the next part of our journey, we will walk down the Appian Way, past the great tombs of the senators, to look for the smaller, humbler markers. We will read the epitaphs written for dogs and birds. We will explore the Roman veterinary arts, the mulo medicina, and how they tried to heal their silent friends, the healer's hands and the stone memories. The sun has set on our imaginary day in Rome. The streets are cooling. The birds have ceased their singing, and the working animals are asleep in their stalls. But in the quiet corners of the stables and the private gardens, there are lights burning. These are the lamps of the healers. Illness and injury were as much a part of animal life then as they are now. But the Romans did not simply let their animals suffer. They had a developed science of care known as mulo medicina, originally the medicine of mules, but applied to all creatures. The mulo medicus was the veterinarian of the ancient world. Visualize a small room adjacent to a large imperial stable. It smells strongly of pitch, vinegar, garlic, and stale wine. These were the antiseptics of the time. A horse stands patiently, favoring a front leg. The doctor, a man of focus and few words, runs his hands down the animal's limb. His hands are rough, stained with herbs, but his touch is incredibly gentle. He is feeling for heat, for swelling. The horse lowers its head, trusting the touch. The tools of the Roman veterinarian were works of art in themselves. Bronze scalpels with handles carved in the shape of lions or griffins, iron cautery tools, spatulas for spreading salves. They were laid out on a wooden table, gleaming in the lamplight. Clink, clink. The sound of metal on wood is sharp in the quiet room. The treatments were often slow, requiring days or weeks of application. The doctor might mix a poultice. Imagine the sound of a pestle grinding against a stone mortar. Grind, scrape, grind. He crushes dried herbs, perhaps rosemary for pain or comfrey for bone healing, mixing them with olive oil and beeswax to create a thick, golden ointment. The smell is pungent and medicinal, clearing the sinuses. He applies the salve to the horse's leg. He wraps it in strips of linen. The wrapping is a rhythmic process. Loop, pull, tuck. The bandage must be tight enough to support, but not so tight as to cut off circulation. It is a skill of the hands, learned over decades. The horse breathes out, a long, shuddering sigh of relief as the pain dulls. But it was not just horses. We have records of treatments for dogs, for birds, and even for the sacred chickens. Columella, the great agricultural writer, gave recipes for chicken soup. Yes, chicken soup, to be fed to sick poultry to restore their strength. It is a strange, domestic detail. A Roman farmer carefully spoon-feeding broth to a sick hen. It speaks of a level of care that goes beyond mere utility. However, despite the best efforts of the Mula Medicus, life eventually ends. And here we touch upon the most poignant aspect of the Roman relationship with animals, the grief of loss. In the modern world, we might think that ancient people, accustomed to high mortality rates and brutal wars, were hardened against the death of a pet. But the stones tell a different story. The Romans buried their animals, and they did not just bury them. They wrote poetry for them. Let us walk out of the city gates along the Via Appia. This is the city of the dead, where the great tombs of senators and generals line the road. But look closer. Look down into the tall grass near the ditches. There, among the grand monuments, are small, humble stones. These are the graves of dogs. Kneel down in the grass. The stone is weathered, covered in lichen, but the inscription is still legible. It is carved in Latin, the letters sharp and clear. It reads, Maya est. This is Maya, and below it, a poem. How sweet and friendly she was. While she was alive, she would lie in my lap, always seeking sleep. It is a simple image. A small dog named Maya, which means fly, perhaps because she was small and quick, sleeping in her master's lap. The stone is cold to the touch, but the sentiment is warm. It is a capsule of love that has survived for 2,000 years. Move to another stone. This one is for a dog named Patricus. The inscription is longer, more detailed. The owner writes, My eyes were wet with tears, our little dog, when I bore thee to the grave. So, Patricus, never again shalt thou give me 1,000 kisses. Never canst thou be contentively in my lap. In sadness, I have buried thee. 1,000 kisses. The Latin word is bagia. It is an intimate word. This was not a working animal to this person. This was a family member. The grief is raw. You can feel the heaviness in the chest of the person who commissioned this stone. They paid a stone cutter, arguably a week's wages, to ensure that Patricus would not be forgotten. There are stones for hunting dogs, too. One epitaph for a dog named Margarita, Pearl, reads, I never barked without reason. I was silent when the thieves came. but I hunted the wolves fearlessly. It is a tribute to professionalism, but also to character. And it wasn't just dogs. We find epitaphs for racehorses, listing their victories and their lineage. We find tombs for birds. There is a famous poem by Ovid on the death of a parrot, Cytacus. He calls upon all the birds of the air to mourn, to beat their wings in grief. He describes the parrot's journey to the Elysian fields, the Roman heaven, where it will fly forever in a grove of dark trees. Imagine the ritual of burial. It is a quiet affair. A hole is dug in the garden or a field outside the city. The earth is dark and rich. Scoop, toss, scoop, toss. The body of the animal is wrapped in a cloth. Maybe a favorite toy is placed inside, a bone, a bell, a leather collar. The earth is filled back in. A stone is placed on top. This act of burying a pet is a universal human experience. Standing by that imaginary grave in ancient Rome, we are connected to every person who has ever said goodbye to a loyal friend. The silence of the grave is not empty. It is filled with memory. The Romans believed in the manes, the spirits of the dead. Did animals have manes? The poets seemed to think so. They imagined their dogs waiting for them in the afterlife. They hoped that the earth would rest lightly on them. Sit tibi terra levis. May the earth lie lightly upon you. This was the standard Roman prayer for the dead, and they used it for their animals too. The atmosphere of these small animal cemeteries is not spooky. It is peaceful. The wind rustles the cypress trees. The sun warms the stones. Lizards scuttle over the inscriptions. It is a place of rest. As we linger here, reading the names Maya, Patricus, Margarita, Iolus, we realize that the boring history of daily life is actually the history of love. The grand battles and the political speeches fade away, but the image of a dog sleeping in a lap remains. It is the small, quiet moments that define a life, human or animal. The night is fully upon us now. The lamps in the houses are burning low. The city of Rome is asleep. The dogs are curled on their mats. The horses are standing in their stalls, eyes closed. The cats are prowling the rooftops, and the spirits of the forgotten animals are resting in the earth. We have traveled through the day and the night, through the house and the farm, through the water and the woods. We have seen the Roman world through the eyes of its non-human inhabitants. But our exploration is not quite finished. To truly understand the scale of this relationship, we must look at the supply chain that supported it, the markets, the food, the leather, the sheer materiality of the animal world. In the next part, we will visit the Forum Boarium, the cattle market, and the shops that sold the collars, the cages, and the bells. We will look at the commerce of companionship, the market of beasts and the jingling bells. The sun rises over the Aventine Hill, casting long shadows across the valley. We are leaving the quiet dignity of the cemeteries and returning to the pulse of the living city. But we are not going to the political Forum Romanum with its speeches and laws. We are heading to the riverbank, to the oldest market in Rome, the Forum Boarium, the cattle market. This is a place of commerce, but it is also a place of sensory density. The air here is thick. It smells of the Tiber River, damp mud and water weeds, mixed with the warm, grassy scent of thousands of animals. It is a smell that has permeated this soil for centuries. Visualize the scene. It is chaotic, yet there is a rhythm to it. Wooden pens are set up in a grid. Inside them stand the oxen, the boves. These are the heavy movers of the Roman world. They are immense animals, white or dun-colored, with wide, wet noses and horns that curve like the crescent moon. Watch an ox standing in the pen. It is a statue of patience. It chews its cud. The jaw moves sideways, a slow, circular grinding motion that never seems to stop. Grind, swallow, regurgitate, grind. It is a cycle of digestion that takes hours. The animal blinks slowly, its long lashes sweeping away the flies. It lowers its head to drink from a trough. The sound of water being sucked up is loud and rhythmic. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Farmers and merchants walk between the pens. They are serious men. They do not look at the animals with the affection of a pet owner, but with the critical eye of a mechanic inspecting an engine. They run their hands over the flanks of the oxen, checking the muscle density. They lift the hooves to check for cracks. They pull open the lips to inspect the teeth. It is a tactile, silent negotiation. A nod, a handshake. Coins change hands, heavy bronze sestertii clinking into a leather pouch. But the Forum Boarium was not just for cattle. As the empire grew, the market diversified. Around the edges, in the shade of the Temple of Hercules Victor, a round colonnaded building that still stands today, there were smaller stalls. These were the pet shops of antiquity. Here, you could buy the accessories that made life with animals possible. Let us look at the collars. The Roman dog collar, the mellum, was a piece of craftsmanship. They were made of thick leather, tanned to a deep brown or black. Imagine picking one up. The leather is stiff but smooth. It smells of oil and skin. Some are simple straps. Others are studded with bronze or iron spikes. These were for the flock guardians, the dogs that had to fight off wolves. The spikes would protect the dog's throat. Running your finger over the cold, sharp point of a bronze spike, you can feel the brutal practicality of the object. But there were also collars for the city dogs, the pets. These were often decorated with intricate metal work, and they carried messages. Just like modern dog tags, Roman collars often had inscriptions on bronze plates. One famous surviving tag reads, "Tene me nefugia et revoca me ad dominum meum." Hold me, lest I flee, and return me to my master. It is a small, human detail. A Roman owner, worried that their dog might get lost in the winding streets of the Subura, paid an engraver to carve these words. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The stylus cutting into the bronze. It is a plea for help across the centuries. Return me. Next to the leather worker sits the bell maker, the tintinnabulum. Romans loved bells. They put them on everything. Horses, mules, goats, dogs, and even cats wore bells. The purpose was practical, to locate the animal in the dark or dense brush, but also superstitious. They believed the sound of bells warded off evil spirits and the evil eye. Imagine a table covered in small bronze bells. They are of different shapes, some square, some round, some shaped like animals' heads. Pick one up and shake it. Tinkle. It is a high, clear sound. Now imagine a flock of sheep moving down a road, each wearing a bell. The sound is a continuous, rippling wave of chimes. Chime, ling, ting, bong. It is a sound texture that defines the Roman countryside. It creates a sonic bubble around the herd, a mobile zone of safety. In the bird section of the market, we see the cages, the cavi. These were works of art made from wicker, wood, or sometimes precious metals for the very rich. Watch a craftsman weaving a wicker cage. He sits on a low stool, His hands move with incredible speed and memory. He takes a soak-softened willow branch. He bends it. Creak. He tucks it under another branch. Snap. The pattern emerges, a grid of natural wood. The smell of the wet willow is sharp and green. The cages were often designed to look like miniature houses or temples. A bird would sit inside a tiny replica of a Roman building, peering out between the columns. It was a way of civilizing the wild, of bringing the chaotic energy of nature into the ordered structure of Roman architecture. There were also stalls selling food for these animals, sacks of millet for the birds, dried meat for the dogs, blocks of salt for the horses, the commerce of care, people spending their hard-earned denarii not on themselves, but on the creatures they lived with. Let us stand for a moment in the center of the market. Close your eyes. Listen to the soundscape. The lowing of the oxen. Moo. A deep bass vibration. The bleating of goats. The chirping of birds in cages. The clinking of the bells. The hammering of the leather worker. The murmur of bargaining voices. It is a cacophony, but a gentle one. It is the sound of life sustaining life. The ground beneath your feet is paved with travertine stones, worn smooth by millions of hooves and sandals. It is dusty. The dust of the market coats everything in a fine gray powder. It settles on the eyelashes of the oxen, on the shoulders of the merchants, on the bronze of the bells. As the morning passes and the sun climbs higher, the activity slows down. The big deals are done. The oxen are led away, their heavy yokes creaking. The crowds disperse for the midday meal. The market becomes quieter. A stray dog wanders through the empty stalls, sniffing the ground for dropped scraps. It finds a piece of crust. It eats it quickly, tail tucked. It is a survivor. We follow this dog as it leaves the market, trotting along the riverbank. It passes the warehouses, the emporium, where goods from all over the empire are stored. Here, we see the other side of the animal economy. Not the living animals, but the materials they provide. The Roman world was built on animal products. Leather, glue, bone, wool, parchment. Every part of the animal was used. There was no waste. In the next part of our journey, we will enter the workshops of the tanners and the parchment makers. We will explore the transformation of biological material into the tools of civilization. It is a process of chemistry, of smell, and of slow, laborious transformation. The tanner's beam and the white skin. We leave the Forum Boarium behind us. We cross the wooden Sublician Bridge to the other side of the Tiber, into the district of Trastevere. Here, the air changes again. The smell of the river mixes with something sharper, more acrid. It is the smell of lime, of oak bark, and of wet hides. We are entering the district of the Coriari, the tanners. While the animals we met earlier were loved for their companionship or labor, the animals here are valued for what they leave behind. Rome was a civilization of leather, the sandals on the feet of every soldier, the tents of the legions, the saddles of the cavalry, the belts of the senators, all began here, in these wet, pungent workshops. Visualize a tannery yard. It is a space filled with large wooden vats and pits dug into the earth. The ground is permanently wet and slippery. The soundscape is dominated by the splashing of water and the rhythmic scraping of tools. Watch the tanner at work. He is a man of immense upper body strength, his arms stained by the tannins of the oak bark. He stands over a wooden beam, a convex log angled upwards. He drapes a wet hide over it. It is heavy, sodden with water and lime. It makes a wet thud as it hits the wood. He takes a tool, a two-handled knife with a curved blade. He leans his weight into it. He pushes the blade down the length of the hide. Scrape, swish, scrape, swish. This is the process of dehairing. It is monotonous work. The knife removes the hair and the remaining flesh, leaving only the clean dermis. He does this for hours. Every inch of the skin must be scraped clean. The sound is consistent, a friction noise that becomes a drone. The hide is then moved to the vats. The tanning process is slow. It cannot be rushed. The skin must soak in a solution of water and crushed oak galls or tree bark. These materials contain tannins, the chemical that turns perishable skin into durable leather. Imagine looking into one of these dark vats. The liquid is brown and murky. The skins float just below the surface, like ghostly blankets. Bubbles rise slowly to the top. Bloop. In these vats, a chemical transformation is happening. The collagen in the skin is binding with the tannins. It is a silent, microscopic hardening. The skin is becoming leather. It sits there for weeks, steeping like a very strong, very strange tea. Nearby, in a cleaner, drier workshop, we find the membranari, the makers of parchment. If leather was for the body, parchment was for the mind. It was the material upon which the laws, the poems, and the history of Rome were written. The process of making parchment is even more delicate. It begins with sheepskin or goatskin. But instead of being tanned to make it tough and waterproof, it is treated to make it white, thin, and smooth. Watch the parchment maker. He takes a wet skin that has been soaked in lime to remove the hair. He does not put it in a vat. Instead, he stretches it onto a wooden frame. He uses small pebbles wrapped in the edges of the skin to create anchor points, then ties cords around these pebbles and pulls them tight against the frame. Creak, tighten, creak, tighten. The skin groans as it is stretched. It must be pulled taut, like the head of a drum. As it dries, it shrinks, becoming incredibly tight. Then comes the scraping. The maker uses a lunellum, a knife shaped like a crescent moon. He scrapes the surface of the stretched skin. Scritch, scratch. He is shaving off microscopic layers of unevenness. He is making it perfectly flat. The sound is dry and dusty. Fine white powder falls to the floor, chalk and skin dust. The result is a material that is beautiful to touch. Run your mental finger over a finished sheet of parchment. It is not like paper. It has a velvet-like nap. It is warm. It has a grain. It is durable enough to last for 1,000 years. It is a boring white sheet, yet it is the foundation of literacy. The smell in this workshop is different. Chalky, dry, faint. It is the smell of a library before the books are written. But the utilization of the animal did not stop at the skin. We must look to the corners of the workshop, where the ebuarii and the bone workers sit. In a world before plastic, bone was the material of small, hard objects. Pins for women's hair, dice for gambling, spoons for eating, hinges for small boxes. All were carved from the bones of cattle or sheep. Watch a bone carver. He holds a small piece of cattle shin bone. It has been boiled to remove the grease and bleached in the sun until it is ivory white. He uses a small bow drill. He loops the string around the drill shaft and moves the bow back and forth. Zisht, zisht, zisht. The drill spins. He presses it into the bone. A small curl of white dust rises. He is making a die, a tessera. He carves the 6 sides. He drills the pips. 1, 2, 3. The sound is high-pitched, a buzzing insect sound. The focus required is intense. If he slips, the bone cracks. The finished object is smooth and cool. Imagine rolling a pair of bone dice in your hand. They click against each other. Click, clack. They are light, yet solid. They are the recycled remains of a dinner, turned into a game of chance. And finally, in the back of these workshops, over a low fire, sits a pot of glue. The Romans made strong glue from the connective tissues, hooves, and hides of animals. The pot simmers. The substance inside is thick, brown, and viscous. It smells like beef broth gone wrong, rich and heavy. A bubble forms on the surface, expands slowly, and bursts with a sticky pop. The glue maker stirs it with a stick. The motion is slow. The glue offers resistance. It is a fluid that behaves like a solid. This glue will be used to bind the wood of furniture, to fix the tiles of a mosaic, to hold the empire together in the most literal sense. The atmosphere of this industrial district is one of transformation. Death is turned into utility. The messy, organic reality of the animal is processed, dried, scraped, and boiled until it becomes clean, dry, and useful. It is a slow, smelly, necessary alchemy. As we walk away from the tanneries, the sun is high and hot. The smell of the lime fades, replaced by the smell of baking bread from a nearby oven. We have seen the animals living, and we have seen them as materials. But what of the animals that existed only in the mind? The animals of myth, of superstition, and of the stars. The Romans looked at the night sky and saw bears, dogs, and swans. They looked at the corners of their maps and imagined monsters. In the next part of our journey, we will leave the physical ground entirely. We will enter the bibliotheca, the library, and open the scrolls of the naturalists and the poets. We will explore the mythical animals of Rome, the she-wolf that nursed Romulus and Remus, the eagles of Jupiter, and the constellations that turned the night sky into a zoo of light, the bronze wolf and the zoo of stars. The noise of the tanner's district fades into a memory. We wash the dust of the market from our hands and feet. We wrap our togas tighter and step into the cool, reverent silence of the bibliotheca, the library. The air here is dry and smells of cedar wood, used to protect the scrolls from moths. It smells of old papyrus and ink. It is a smell of preserved time. The light enters through high windows, falling in soft beams across the wooden shelves, or armoria. Here, in the quiet rustle of unrolling scrolls, lives the animal mythology of Rome. The most important animal in this room, and indeed in the entire Roman consciousness, is one that likely never existed in the way the stories tell. She is the lupa, the she-wolf. Visualize the famous bronze statue that stood on the Capitoline Hill. The beast stands on 4 tense legs. Her ribs are visible beneath her skin, speaking of the hunger of the wild. Her neck is turned, her jaws slightly open, teeth bared not in aggression, but in protection. And beneath her, nursing from her teats, are 2 small human infants, Romulus and Remus. This image is the core of the Roman identity. It is a strange and beautiful paradox. The wolf is a predator, a killer of sheep, a danger to the shepherd. Yet here she is a mother. The Romans believed they were the sons of this wolf. They believed they imbibed her ferocity and her resilience with her milk. In the library, reading the histories of Livy, one contemplates this connection. To be Roman was to be part beast. It was to have a wild heart wrapped in the toga of civilization. The wolf was honored not as a pet, but as a matriarch. In the Lupercalia festival, Priests dressed in goatskins would run through the city, a ritual that harkened back to a time before stone walls, when the wolf prowled the edges of the settlement. Turn the scroll. The papyrus crackles softly. Crinkle, snap. We move from the wolf to the eagle, the Aquila. If the wolf was the mother of the earth, the eagle was the father of the sky. It was the bird of Jupiter, the king of the gods. But more tangibly, it was the soul of the Roman legion. Visualize a legion on the march. Thousands of men in hobnailed sandals, the rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch of their marching. At the front, held high above the dust, is a pole, and on top of that pole sits a golden eagle. Its wings are spread, its head turned. It glides through the air without moving, carried by the aquilifer, the eagle bearer. This golden bird was more than a standard. It was a religious object. To lose the eagle in battle was the ultimate disgrace, a spiritual death for the unit. Soldiers would die to protect it. In the camp at night, the eagle was placed in a special shrine. It was anointed with oils and garlands on holidays. It was treated as a living god. The eagle represented the Roman view of themselves, keen-sighted, soaring above others, striking with sudden and overwhelming force. It is a lonely symbol. The wolf has a pack. The eagle flies alone. But the Romans did not stop at the animals of the earth and air. They projected their fascination with nature into the heavens. Let us leave the library now. It is night. The city is truly dark, lit only by the occasional oil lamp or torch. We stand on a rooftop, perhaps on the Aventine, looking up. The Roman night sky was a zoo of light. Without light pollution, the stars were incredibly bright, hanging low and heavy over the city. The Romans, inheriting the astronomy of the Greeks, saw animals connecting the dots of light. Look north. There, dominating the pole, is Ursa Major, the Great Bear, a massive creature of stars lumbering around the pivot of the sky. And nestled near it, Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. The Romans saw the slow, eternal rotation of the heavens as the movement of these celestial beasts. They were the guardians of the night, always awake, always watching. Look to the south, into the winter sky. There stands the hunter, Orion, and at his heels, the loyal dog, Canis Major. The brightest star in the sky, Sirius, marks the dog's nose or shoulder. The Romans called this the dog star. They believed that when this star rose in conjunction with the sun in late summer, it added its heat to the suns, creating the dog days of summer, dies caniculares. It was a time of lethargy, of heat so intense that men and dogs alike would lie in the shade, panting, too tired to move. Even the stars had a physical effect on the bodies of the Romans. There were other creatures up there. Cygnus, the swan, flying down the Milky Way. Taurus, the bull, charging with his eye of red Aldebaran. Leo, the lion, resting in the zodiac. Pisces, the fish, tied together by a cord of stars. To a Roman standing on this rooftop, the universe was alive. It was not a cold, empty void. It was populated. The animals that they lived with, the dogs, the bears, the lions, the fish, had their divine counterparts in the sky. As below, so above. This connection brought a sense of comfort. A shepherd sleeping in the hills could look up and see the celestial ram, Ares. A sailor on the Mediterranean could navigate by the celestial bear. The animals were the guides. They were the constants in a world of flux. Let us return to the ground, to the realm of the mythical monsters that inhabited the edges of the map. Pliny the Elder wrote of these with the same dry, factual tone he used for agriculture. He wrote of the griffin, part lion and part eagle, guarding gold in the mountains of Scythia. He wrote of the phoenix, the bird that dies in fire and is born again from the ashes. He wrote of the basilisk, a small serpent so venomous that it left a trail of desolation behind it. These creatures were not fantasy to the Romans in the way they are to us. They were simply rare animals that lived far away. The world was vast and largely unexplored. If an elephant was real, and it looked unbelievable enough, why not a griffin? The boundary between the known biological world and the mythical world was porous. Imagine a Roman child listening to these stories by the light of a brazier. The coals glow red. Pop, hiss. The shadows on the wall lengthen. The storyteller speaks of a sea monster, a cetus, wading in the deep ocean. The child shivers, pulling the wool blanket closer. It is a pleasurable fear. It makes the safety of the Roman home feel even warmer. These stories served a purpose. They populated the unknown with life. They gave names to the fears of the wilderness. As the night deepens, the constellations wheel overhead. The great bear dips its paws towards the horizon. The dog star sparkles with a blue-white intensity. The bronze wolf on the Capitol stands silent, her metal eyes watching the sleeping city. The animals of Rome were not just biological machines. They were symbols. They were omens. They were gods. They were the fabric of the Roman imagination. We have now explored the full breadth of the animal experience in Rome, from the mud of the farm to the stars in the sky. But there is one final, crucial element to discuss. It is the legacy. What remains of these animals today? In the next part, we will fast forward through time. We will look at the archaeology of animals. We will visit the excavations where the bones of Roman horses and dogs are found. We will look at the mosaics that have preserved their images for 2,000 years. We will see how the animals of the past speak to us from the earth, the bones in the clay and the paw prints in the tile. The stars fade as the sun rises on a new era, our era. The Roman Empire has fallen, its temples ruined, its libraries scattered, but the animals have remained. They waited in the earth, buried under layers of soil, ash, and time. We now trade the scroll for the trowel. We enter the quiet, dusty world of the archaeologist. Excavation is a slow, meditative process. It is the very definition of boring work in the best possible way. Imagine a trench in the ground, perhaps in a field in Britain or beneath a parking lot in Rome. The air is dry and smells of exposed earth. The soundscape is minimal, the rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape of a metal trowel against hard-packed dirt, the soft swish, swish of a brush clearing away the dust. Here, in the layers of history, we find the physical proof of everything we have imagined tonight. We find the zoo archaeology, the study of ancient animal remains. Most commonly, we find the middens, the ancient garbage dumps. To an archaeologist, a garbage dump is a treasure trove. It is a catalog of daily life. Here, amidst the broken pottery shards, are the bones, thousands of them. Pick up a bone. It is light, porous, and dry. It is the color of parchment. This was the tibia of a cow, perhaps one of the oxen from the Forum Boarium. Look closer. There are small, straight marks on it. Cut marks. These tell us how the animal was butchered, how it was cooked, how it fed the people. It is a story of sustenance etched in calcium. But sometimes we find something different. we find the skeleton of a dog. It was not thrown in the midden. It was buried carefully, the body laid out in a sleeping position. And looking at the bones, the bioarchaeologist notices something profound. There is a fracture on the leg bone, but it is not a jagged, broken edge. It is a smooth, swollen lump of bone. It is healed. This dog broke its leg 2,000 years ago. In the wild, it would have died. But someone, a Roman soldier, a matron, a child, set the bone. They splinted it. They fed the dog while it couldn't hunt. They carried it. The healed bone is a fossilized act of kindness. It is physical proof of love. We move from the earth to the fired clay. Roman architecture was built on brick and tile. These tiles were made in vast yards, laid out in rows to dry in the sun before being fired in the kiln. And while they were drying, the world didn't stop. One of the most delightful finds in Roman archaeology is the tegula, the roof tile, with a footprint. Imagine the wet clay, cool and soft. A dog, ignoring the shouts of the brickmaker, trots across the drying tiles. Squish, squish, squish. The paw sinks into the clay, leaving a perfect impression of its pads and claws. The clay dries. It is fired. It becomes stone hard. The dog lives its life and dies. The empire falls. 2,000 years pass. And today, you can go to a museum, look at a Roman tile, and place your own finger into the paw print of that dog. It fits perfectly. It is a tactile handshake with the past. We find prints of dogs, cats, goats, and even chickens who wandered where they shouldn't have. It reminds us that the animals were always there, weaving through the serious business of building an empire, indifferent to human rules. And then there is Pompeii, the city frozen in ash. Here, the evidence is not just bones, but shapes. The organic material decayed, leaving hollow voids in the hardened ash. Archaeologists poured plaster into these voids, creating casts of the victims in their final moments. There is a famous cast of a dog from the house of Orpheus. It is a difficult image, but a powerful one. The dog was chained to a post. We can see its collar, the bronze studs preserved in the plaster. We can see the tension in its body as it tried to escape the falling ash. But let us step back from the tragedy and look at the detail. The plaster captured the texture of the fur. It captured the shape of the ears. It captured the size of the animal, a medium-sized watchdog, likely a mix of terrier and hound. Even in death, the animal is defined by its duty. It guarded the house until the very end. These casts are silent statues, ghosts given form, standing in the quiet ruins of the city. In the museums, we also see the survival of art. The mosaics we imagined earlier are now on the walls. The Cave Canem mosaic is real. You can stand before it. The black and white stones are still vibrant. The dog still bares its teeth. The message is still clear. We see small glass paste gems carved with images of cattle. We see oil lamps shaped like horses. We see children's toys, terracotta horses on wheels. Imagine a Roman child pulling a toy horse across a stone floor. Rattle, rattle, rattle. That toy sits in a glass case now, silent, but it holds the memory of that sound. The archaeology of animals is an archaeology of silence. Animals do not leave written records. They do not build monuments to themselves. They leave only these small traces, a bone, a print, a toy, a picture. But these traces are everywhere. They show us that the Roman world was not a sterile place of white marble statues. It was a world of biology, a world of barking, clucking, mooing, and purring. As we stand in the imaginary museum, the lights are dimmed. The artifacts are safe behind glass. The dust has settled. We have dug up the past and found that it looks very much like the present. The dog prints in the clay are the same as the muddy prints on your kitchen floor. The skeleton of the horse is the same structure as the horse in the field today. The continuity is comforting. Empires rise and fall, languages change, religions shift, but the shape of a dog's paw remains exactly the same. The way a cat sits remains exactly the same. In the next part of our journey, we will look at this continuity. We will look at the descendants of the Roman animals. Are the dogs of Rome still with us? What happened to the breeds? We will trace the bloodlines from the ancient world to the modern sofa. We will look at the legacy of the Latin language in how we talk about animals today. The living echoes and the spoken fossils. We have looked at the bones in the museum cases, dry and silent. Now, let us step back into the sunlight of the modern world. Let us imagine a farm in the Abruzzo region of Italy, or perhaps a comfortable living room in New York or London. Because the animals of Rome did not vanish. They changed, they adapted, but their bloodlines, their genetic memory, survived. They are sleeping on our rugs right now. Consider the Cane Corso. This powerful Italian breed is the most direct living descendant of the Roman Canis pugnax, the war dog. Look at a modern Cane Corso sleeping. It is a massive animal with a broad, square head and a muscular neck. When it sleeps, it is a heavy, grounded presence. Its breathing is deep and resonant. Inhale, exhale. The jowls flutter slightly with each breath. In its DNA, in the spiral ladder of its chromosomes, lie the memories of the Colosseum, the memories of guarding the legionary camps on the Rhine frontier. The empire fell. The marble columns crumbled, but the biological design of this guardian survived. It is a living artifact. To pat the head of a Cane Corso is to touch the shadow of a Roman soldier. And then there is the Marimano Abruzzese sheepdog. Remember the white shepherd dogs we visualized in the hills of Samnium? They are still there. If you drive through the rural parts of Italy today, you will see them. Large, white, fluffy dogs lying amidst the sheep. They look exactly as the Roman writer Columella described them 2,000 years ago. White, so they are not mistaken for wolves in the twilight, strong enough to fight a bear, gentle enough to nudge a lamb. They have not changed because their job has not changed. The sheep are the same. The wolves are the same. The mountains are the same. So the dog remains the same. It is a perfect example of, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Watching a Maremma dog sitting motionless on a hillside is like looking at a living statue from antiquity. At the other end of the spectrum, consider the Italian greyhound. These slender, fragile creatures are the likely descendants of the small companion dogs favored by Roman matrons. They are built for warmth. They shiver easily. They seek out the sunbeams on the floor. Watch an Italian greyhound burrow under a blanket. It digs with its slender paws, scratch, scratch, until it has created a cave. It crawls inside, leaving only a nose visible. This need for warmth, this desire to be close to human skin, is a trait selected for over millennia. A Roman woman in a cold stone villa held a similar dog to keep warm, just as a modern person holds one today. The need for comfort is timeless. But the legacy of Rome is not just in the blood, it is in the breath of our language. We speak Roman every time we talk about animals. The words we use are linguistic fossils, polished by centuries of use. but retaining their original shape. When you say the word canine, you are speaking Latin. Canis. The word has traveled through time, through French, into English, but the root is pure Roman. When you say feline, you are summoning the spirit of Felis, the cat that watched the grain stores. Equestrian comes from equus, the horse. Bovine comes from bos, the ox. Apiary comes from apis, the bee. Aviary comes from avis, the bird. Even the scientific names, the taxonomy used by biologists all over the world to classify life, are Latin. The gray wolf is Canis lupus, the domestic cat is Felis catus, the wild boar is Sus scrofa. We have wrapped the natural world in the cloak of the Latin language. Rome conquered the world not just with swords, but with nouns. Think about the word veterinarian. It comes from the Latin veterini, meaning beasts of burden. Every time we take a pet to the vet, we are using a word that originally described the care of Roman pack animals. The clinic smells of antiseptic today instead of vinegar and garlic, but the concept is identical. There is a comfort in this continuity. It suggests that our relationship with animals is not a modern fad. It is a deep, structural part of being human. The Romans were just like us. They gave their dogs silly names. They worried when their horses were sick. They admired the grace of a bird in flight. As we sit with our own pets, stroking their fur, listening to the rhythm of their breathing, we are participating in a ritual that is thousands of years old. The connection between the human hand and the animal coat is a bridge across time. Imagine a Roman hand stroking a dog in 100 AD. Now imagine your hand stroking a dog in 2025. The feeling is the same. The warmth is the same. The trust is the same. The history of animals is the history of this shared warmth. The sun has set on the empire. The legions are gone. The emperors are dust. But the dogs are still barking. The cats are still purring. The birds are still singing the morning chorus. The biological world is the most enduring legacy of all. As we approach the end of our long journey, we must prepare to leave the ancient world behind. We must say goodbye to the Molossian, the parrot, the ox, and the tiny dormouse in his jar. The final night watch. The history books are closed. The archaeologists have put down their trowels. The sun has long since vanished behind the Janiculum Hill. We are back in the ancient city for one last time, but this time there is no bustle. There is no commerce. There is only the Nox, the night. We are taking the final watch. We are walking the streets to ensure that the city is at rest. It is the third watch of the night, the deepest, darkest hour before the dawn. The air is cool and smells of cooling stone and distant wood smoke. Let us start at the Domus, the house where we began. We step over the threshold. The mosaic dog, the cave canem, is swallowed by shadows. In the corner of the atrium, on a thick wool mat, lies the real dog, the Molossian. He is a heavy, dark shape. Listen to his breathing. It is deep and slow. Inhale, pause, exhale. It is the rhythm of total security. Occasionally, his legs twitch as he chases a phantom rabbit in his dreams. His ears are relaxed. He knows, with his superior senses, that there is no danger tonight. The house is safe. The family is safe. We leave him to his dreams. We move silently through the house, past the tablinum. The scrolls are rolled up. The wax tablets are cold. On the master's chair, a small curled shape is barely visible. The cat. It has tucked its nose under its tail, creating a closed circle of warmth. It is a perfect sphere of fur. It does not move as we pass. It is in a state of suspended animation, conserving every ounce of heat. The silence of the cat is absolute. We step out into the garden. The moon is high now, casting a silver light over the peristyle. The fish pond is a sheet of black glass. Nothing moves on the surface. The fish are resting in the depths, hovering near the bottom, their movements slowed by the cooling water. The fountain has been turned off for the night. The water in the basin is still. The reflection of the moon in the water is perfect, unbreaking. In the aviary, the birds are silent. The parrots have their heads tucked into their back feathers. They look like colorful balls of fluff on their perches. The peacock is roosting high in a cypress tree, its magnificent tail folded away, just a long silhouette against the stars. There is no squawking, no fluttering, only the gentle rustle of leaves in a faint breeze. Rustle. Hush. We leave the villa and walk out into the street. The basalt stones are cool under our feet. The city is a labyrinth of shadows. We pass the stables. The doors are barred. Inside, we hear the heavy, comforting sounds of large animals, the thump of a hoof against straw, the deep, resonant sigh of a horse settling its weight. The smell of hay is warm and sweet. The mules are sleeping standing up, heads lowered, lips loose. They have carried the burdens of the empire all day. Now they carry nothing. They are simply existing. We walk towards the river. The Tiber flows silently, a dark ribbon moving towards the sea. Near the warehouses, the stray cats are on patrol. We see a pair of green eyes flash in the darkness, then vanish. They are the silent guardians of the grain, working even while the city sleeps. They move without sound, paws placing softly on the wood of the docks. Further out, towards the Forum Boreum, the cattle market is empty of people. The oxen in their pens are lying down, their legs tucked under them. They look like boulders in the moonlight. Their chewing has stopped. They are asleep. The great strength of their shoulders is relaxed. The bells around their necks are silent. No tinkle, no clank, just the sound of slow, heavy breath. We pass the workshops of the tanners. The vats are still. The water is flat. The tools are hanging on the walls. The labor is done. The leather is drying in the dark. We go to the gates of the city. The Praetorian guards are at their posts, leaning on their spears. But near their feet, the camp dogs are asleep. Even the soldiers' companions are resting. One dog lifts its head as we pass, sniffs the air, recognizes us as friends, and lays its head back down. Thud. We look out beyond the walls, to the hills. We cannot see them, but we know they are there. The shepherds and their white dogs. Up on the dark slopes, the Canis pastoralis is lying in the grass. One eye opens to check the flock. The sheep are a huddle of wool, a single warm mass. The dog closes its eye. The wolf is far away tonight. The bellwether sheep shifts, a tiny, muffled ding from its bell, and then silence returns. We look to the forest. The wild boar is in its den, deep in the undergrowth. The deer is standing perfectly still in a clearing, bathed in moonlight. The owl glides overhead, a shadow on a shadow, silent as a thought. We look to the sky. The great bear, Ursa Major, has rotated around the pole star. The celestial animals are continuing their eternal march. They do not tire. They do not sleep. They watch over the sleeping animals of the earth. Everything is in its place, the domestic and the wild, the predator and the prey, the worker and the pet. The entire biological machinery of the Roman world has slowed down to a halt. The heartbeat of the city has slowed to a resting pace. Thump, thump, thump. There is a profound sense of weight to this sleep. It is a sleep earned by hard work, by survival, by loyalty. It is a heavy, blanketed sleep. The stone walls of Rome hold the heat of the day and wrap the city in a warm embrace. We have seen it all. We have checked every corner. There are no loose ends. The gates are locked. The fires are banked. The animals are fed and watered. We can now retreat. We can step back from the streets, back from the history, back from the details. We can let the image of the sleeping city fade. We can let the gray of the stone and the green of the garden dissolve into a soft, dark blur. The night is safe. You are safe. The animals are guarding the silence. In the final part, part 15, we will offer the closing words. We will say our final goodbyes to the faithful companions of Rome. We will dim the lights completely and let the centuries close over us like a warm quilt. We will end our journey, the eternal slumber and the fading embers. And so, we have reached the end of the road. We have walked the cobbled streets of the eternal city, from the first light of dawn to the deepest hour of the night. We have stood in the noisy markets and the silent temples. We have touched the cold marble of the fountains and the warm fur of the sleeping dogs. The images we have conjured tonight are slowly beginning to fade. The vibrant colors of the peacock's tail are softening into gray. The shimmering scales of the fish in the pond are disappearing into the dark water. The busy hum of the beehive has quieted to a single, distant vibration. It is time to let go of the details. You do not need to remember the dates. You do not need to remember the Latin names. You do not need to remember the chemical process of tanning leather or the specific design of a birdcage. Those things belong to the day, to the world of facts and figures. Now, only the feeling remains. The feeling of a world that was biological, organic, and deeply connected. A world where the boundaries between the human and the animal were porous and warm. Think one last time of the dog, Patricus, who gave 1,000 kisses. He is resting now. Think of the cat in the grain store, the silent watcher in the shadows. She is resting now. Think of the old mule standing in the stable, smelling the sweet hay. He is resting now. They have all found their peace in the soft earth of history. Their watch is ended. They do not worry about the rise and fall of emperors. They do not worry about the price of grain or the borders of the province. They simply exist in the eternal present of memory. And in this way, they teach us how to rest. They remind us that the most important things in life are the simplest. A warm place to sleep, a full belly, the presence of a trusted friend, the rhythm of a steady breath. Inhale, exhale. As you lie there, in your own time, in your own room, you are part of this continuity. The safety that the Roman dog felt at the foot of his master's bed is the same safety you feel now. The quiet of the Roman night is the same quiet that surrounds you now. The dark is not empty. It is a blanket that covers us all, spanning across the centuries. The fire in the hearth is dying down. The coals are turning from bright orange to a dull, comforting red. Soon they will be just gray ash, soft and cool. The shadows in the room are lengthening, merging together until everything is a single, soft shade of dark. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to go. The gates are shut. The animals are asleep. The history book is closed. If you are still awake, thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Thank you for lending your imagination to the forgotten creatures of the past. If you enjoyed this journey into the quiet side of history, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps the channel grow, slowly and steadily, like an oak tree. But for now, let the images dissolve, let the sounds fade, let the weight of the day slip off your shoulders like a heavy cloak. You are safe, you are warm, you are ready to sleep. Good night, tired little peeps. Bene dormias. Sleep well. Sleep, sleep, sleep. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.